Welcome to your Aged Care Compass podcast. Join us to find out how to support your older loved ones at home. We're going to help you make sense of Australia's aged care system. We talk about legal and financial considerations for ageing and how chronic health conditions impact your older loved ones' well-being. And we share real-life stories of where it went wrong for people and how we got them back on track.
Hello everyone, and thanks for joining us again today. I'm Coral, your host, and I'm excited to introduce Anna Millisser as my guest today. Anna has been involved in the home care sector since the mid-1990s and weathered all the changes and reforms that have led us to where we are now. She spends her days working with providers to improve their communication with their clients and families through her monthly newsletter, Home Care HQ. And more recently with tailored resources to demystify support at home. Anna, it's great to have you join me on the podcast at last. It's been such a busy few months since September last year, a date which I think most of the sector will recognise for its significance, as well as the community, older people who receive the assistance at home and their families. To kick off, let's talk about September the 12th last year. What happened on this date and why is it so significant?
Hello, Coral. It's so great to be here too. I've really enjoyed listening to your podcasts and I'm delighted to be involved. So just to answer the question about the 12th of September. So the 12th of September 2024 is the date that the Australian government introduced three key parts of their aged care reform. I'm not going to go into all of them, but just to give you a quick snapshot. So the first is that they introduced the Aged Care Bill 2024 to the Parliament. So that becomes a really pivotal moment. They announced the reforms to funding for the future of the home care program, and that was part of their response to the Aged Care Task Force report. Again, not for our discussion today. And most importantly, they provided details of what was going to be the new program called Support at Home, which would replace the Home Care Packages program. So that date is so important because it marks the line for people who are already in the system and how they would be treated compared to people who were and are yet to join the home care system and how they will be treated under the new program called Support at Home. So that's really, it's literally just like a line in the sand. Everything that anyone that was involved in and that assessment pre-12 September 2024, they are treated in one particular way and everyone coming after that treated differently. So that's essentially what the discussion is going to be about today.
Yes. So look, the topic that's really been dominating the conversation in terms of assistance for older people at home, and as you said, it's going to be called, or it is called, the Support at Home program beginning on July 1st. You're doing a lot of education in this space. So how do you feel the sector is going in terms of preparedness for the changes that are coming in July?
So there's a range of approaches that providers are taking, and I guess the word I would choose is apprehensive. So they are apprehensive about how they, as service providers, are going to manage the changes that are happening to them from a business perspective as home care package providers. But also there's a great deal of apprehension about how a provider's customers, the consumers, the participants, if you like, how they are going to cope with these changes. And then being able to explain it, there's so many things happening all at once that the providers themselves are grappling with how to understand it, let alone being able to then adequately explain it to their clients themselves, because often it's the staff that really still have not got a full picture. Really, at the moment, providers are just wanting to get the final pieces of information about the Support at Home rules so they can best prepare as they can, knowing that there is such a tight timeline because the 1st of July 2025 is the day that everything starts.
The changes are absolutely massive. And honestly, I think since September the 12th, we've all been a bit apprehensive about 8 months is a very short period of time to really, a term I've used is it's upending the sector. The change is so significant. It's a whole new way of thinking and approaching how people are supported at home.
Exactly. And look, I think just to sort of add to that, the premise behind the reforms is sound. It's about a fundamental shift from a government perspective and wanting to make sure that the program, the support at home or any other care at home programs are sustainable into the future. And I think whilst there is apprehension, there's still many people who are excited about having a new direction to follow. It's just that there's some issues right now that still really need to be ironed out. And I'm not going to sugarcoat any of that either.
No, look, I would agree with you as well. So look, we've just spoken about how you feel the sector is preparing and how they're feeling. What about recipients, the recipients of care, the recipients of home care service provision? Have you got a sense of how they're feeling about these changes coming in July?
Yes, I think there's one thing that I've learned certainly in the last sort of 8 to 10 years in this aged care sector is that the people using the services are much more engaged and much more vocal about their experience. And so there's Facebook groups that galore that really deal with these sorts of things, and people stepping into that space and becoming much more vocal, asking questions, giving responses and so forth. Probably just before I go on a little bit about that, it's worth noting that there are some key changes in terminology. So where at the moment, people who are using the home care packages program are referred to in the department materials as consumers. Providers can call them what they have, their own things. They might be help members or clients or anything. But anyway, so consumers is the lingo at the moment, and that's going to be moving to the term participant. Yeah. And this is that switch or shift is supposed to indicate a more inclusive partnership role between providers and the participant. So it's more about being engaged and involved and participating in this whole process rather than being necessarily passive care recipients and having things done around them and for them and to them. So when supported home was first announced, there were some big concerns from consumers and family members, not to mention the providers, but just thinking of the consumers, around there was an announcement about there being a cap to the number of hours of gardening and cleaning that any person could access in a 12-month period. And I know you've already talked about that in previous episodes. So that was very quickly reversed by the government. And so as there's no longer any caps to those gardening and hours of gardening and cleaning, but it really got people talking. And it got them in to start paying attention and looking then for what other details are there in the information that's been released so far that individuals, older people and their family members themselves need to understand and prepare for. So as I said, you've got Facebook groups, the Older Persons Advocacy Network do a lot of education in this space. Of course, your followers, your clients when you're working in your private work. And there's so many questions being asked, and people really, really want to understand where they fit into the new program.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, it's actually been really encouraging, as you said, the Facebook groups that have popped up and the activity and the discussion that goes on in those groups it's really good. And for the most part, those discussions, I mean, there's some that have some inaccuracies, but honestly, these people have got their finger on the pulse, and I think that reflects all the education that the sector you mentioned, OPAN, is providing that. And I know I've been on those webinars as well, and there are thousands of people tuning in. So it's wonderful that people are really taking the time to get their head around these big changes.
I think one of the concerns is that the information is not coming from the government themselves, and that's probably one of the biggest issues, that from a consumer perspective or participant perspective, the material that's been produced so far is not adequate to really help people understand where they fit. So they're having to get it from other places, and so that's why there is misinformation sometimes, or the messaging is perhaps not as clear as it could be, because the government themselves are leaving it to home care providers, Facebook, OPAN, other places to actually do that on their behalf, and they haven't yet really come forward with some particularly targeted resources.
Yeah. So look, Annie, you touched on this a moment ago, as September the 12th being the sort of the defining or the delineation in those who were in the system and those coming after September 12th. Can you explain for our listeners what the implication is for those who were in the system at September the 12th and those who weren't? Big question, I know, but I think it's really important for people to understand, because it does. It makes a difference to what their service provision is going to look like going forward.
Yes. Actually, no. and I'm yes and no. How about that? It is going to make a difference to certain parts of how they get treated by the system. But in terms of service provision, it's not really going to make a difference from the service, what types of services they can or cannot receive moving forward. So it's probably more just a little adjustment of that language. So to answer the question about the 12th of September, I've started using more simple or friendly language to try to even help myself understand this. So I'll share that with you. Okay. I've been very open about how this works with anyone else that I'm talking to as well. There are essentially going to be 3 distinct groups of participants in the new program. So right now we have the people who were before the 12th of September 2024 were already receiving a home care package. That's nice and simple. So they were already on a package, or they had been assessed by the aged care assessment team as eligible for a package, and they were just waiting for that to process
To be assigned.
be finished up. Yep, so they should be assigned. Or and essentially they were already on that waiting list. So they were in the system, if you like, as of the 12th of September. Those people we're calling them just the grandfathered participants. That's nice and simple because their conditions, some of their conditions are being grandfathered across into the new program. Then you've got this tricky little group which I'm calling the hybrids. Now, the hybrid participants are those who had not had an assessment as of the 12th of September, but they've been assessed by the aged care assessment team or the single assessment service, as they're now called, anytime from the 12th of September until the 30th of June this year. So we're in this transition or hybrid phase right now.
Yep.
Those people are up until the end of June are treated exactly the same as grandfathered people are, because they get a home care package level when they've been assessed or assigned the package. They're accumulating their unspent funds as they're going along. They've got the flexibility of being able to pivot and move their services around a little bit more. So they're in this honeymoon phase, if you like, where they're treated like the grandfathered people. But there's one very, very important thing for the hybrids, is that on the 1st of July, all of those people who are hybrids that have been assessed within that period, that 15-month period, they will be required to pay the new fees under the contribution framework that the government will be introducing. So it's the honeymoon period where you're just like everybody else as a grandfather consumer, but on this date, the 1st of July, those people, the honeymoon is over, and those people in that transition or hybrid phase will be required to pay fees as if they are a brand new entrant into the program after that date.
Yeah.
And that third group, which of course we're not talking about today either, is the newbies. These are people who are yet to be, they don't even know, they're living their lives as they are now. They're not even having an assessment. Hopefully everything's going swimmingly, and they have not even yet started thinking about having an assessment. So they're not even in the system, just they're the newbies. That's a whole different group altogether. So that's essentially the 3 groups: grandfathered, the hybrids, the newbies.
Fantastic. Excellent explanation of a complex process. So look, we talked about previously, Anna, how we were going to approach our conversation today and talk about at least 2 of the groups that you have just identified. And we decided that we would focus on those truly grandfathered recipients or participants today, those who had a home care package or had been assessed in the National Priority System as at the 12th of September. So our conversation will focus on just that group today. And just to reassure everybody, Anna is coming back to talk about the honeymooners in our next episode. And then hopefully as we move towards after July 1st, we'll see if we can talk her into coming back about that third group. But look, we'll begin with discussing a topic that we're seeing pop up again and again that's particularly relevant to this grandfather group, and that's the co-contributions. So there's a lot of nervousness about the co-contributions from older people, the participants in the community. We know that people who were not contributing at September the 12th we know that people won't be worse off, but certainly those that were not contributing anything won't be contributing. In fact, the dialogue, the conversation that we're hearing, that we're participating in, is that people won't be worse off. Anna, what does no worse off mean for people who had a package or were in the queue, the priority system, as at September the 12th? In terms of the co-contributions.
Absolutely. So this is a very interesting discussion topic, as you mentioned. Okay, so I'm going to separate this into two parts. So there's the people who are full age pensioners who who essentially one group, and we'll talk about them just quickly. And then there's the second group, which are people who are self-funded retirees or part pensioners who may already be asked to pay an income-tested care fee. So we're going to split these two things just a little bit.
Yep.
I'll come back to that in a second. So in the meantime, the government have indicated that they are introducing, so under the new Support at Home program, they have indicated that they're introducing a user pays fee structure to home care because the costs to the taxpayer are very significant to deliver aged care and home care services in the country. So the costs are significant. And the government are saying that the new changes making this a user-pays system is going to make the future of home care more sustainable into the future. I mean, that's sort of exactly what you would expect to hear from a government perspective. So no surprises there. But the proposed fees have definitely been met with a fair bit of opposition from consumers themselves, from families, from providers, from advocates in the sector, depending on who you're talking to. It's a big issue now. I don't think it's ever going to stop being a big issue, to be honest. Now, the no worse off principle. This is what the government is calling the approach to fee paying into the future. So again, as you mentioned, people who were already in the system, they're saying they will be no worse off in terms of their financial contributions when they move to the new program on the 1st of July this year in 2025. So no worse off means that people who were already receiving the package and that definition that we gave before, they will not pay any more now in the future than they are paying right now. That really relates to people who are full pensioners and around that sort of basic daily care fee. So if a person has paid zero daily care fees up until now, that will not change ever. So the government have guaranteed that those people who are paying zero now will pay zero in the future. That's really, really important to know. We will be talking a little bit in a moment around that income-tested care fee, but I suppose just to sort of summarise that no worse off, and to be really clear, it does only relate to the financial contributions that a person is being asked to make to the cost of their care. The no worse off principle doesn't cover other parts of the arrangements that they're experiencing at the moment, but we're going to come to that again in a moment.
Look, that's very reassuring, Anna. I know that my mum was in that cohort of aged pensioners. She was on a level 4 package, and we as a family were contributing a very significant amount on top of her funding already. And so in our circumstance, that mum may have had to contribute it was very concerning for us as a family, because where on earth were we going to find any more money? Because my mum certainly didn't have that kind of money to contribute. But as an aged pensioner, any aged pensioners listening now, very reassuring that you will never have to contribute that co-contribution.
As long as you were in that grandfathered.
Exactly.
Yes,
as long as you
section,
had your
sector.
package, at September the 12th. So then there is that other little group within these people that were in the system, had a package as September the 12th, who were paying an income tested fee, or the ITF. They've got like a concession, so they will still contribute something. And I just wonder if you can talk about that, Anna, how that's going to look.
Absolutely. So there's only, from my understanding, there is only around maybe 12 or 13% of people who are currently receiving a home care package, and there's over 280,000 of them. There's only about 12 or 13% that are paying an income-tested care fee right now. So this is a much smaller part of the cohort of grandfathered clients. So just to confirm that, even for people who are paying or are assessed as being able to pay an income-tested care fee right now, they are still guaranteed under the no worse off principle forever. So if a person is a self-funded retiree or a part pensioner and paying or assessed to be able to pay an income-tested care fee right now, they will be protected under the no worse off principle forever. But the government has created a new table which outlines the percentage of their contributions, which is much, much lower than people who are entering the system as either transition hybrids or newbies into the system. Remembering that the difference between the way fees work now in income-tested care fees, as currently a person paying an income-tested care fee pays per day that they occupy the package, whereas under the new program, they will only be paying for the services that they use. And that's a very big shift in the home care program. So a person who is currently paying an income-tested care fee, and if they are grandfathered, will only pay for the individual services that they use, but at a reduced rate compared to those entering the system after the 12th of September. It's really important to note, and this is not something that I have not seen talked about in much of the public discourse at all, Coral, is that there are a number of people who are assessed by Services Australia as being able to pay an income-tested care fee right now. But sometimes their provider just chooses not to collect that fee from them. So they're paying $0, but they are assessed by Services Australia as being able to pay an income-tested care fee. So there's a big distinction there.
Yes.
So the question about whether they, as the income-tested care fee grandfathered person, will be paying fees into the new program, the answer is yes, they will, because it's the no worse off principle applies to how much Services Australia deem them as being able to pay, not whether or not their provider is currently collecting it or not.
Excellent point to make, Anna, and I agree with you. I have not seen this conversation happening out there. I've not heard it from providers either. So yet another kind of little subgroup within all these different groups, according to the 12th of September or the 30th of June. I'm really glad you raised that, because we've not covered off on that point in any of the discussions we've had in the podcast around support at home yet.
FlexiCare is a not-for-profit organisation which supports older people living in Brisbane's southern suburbs to live their best lives in their own homes and communities. FlexiCare don't have grand plans to be the biggest aged care provider. They want to be known for treating each one of their participants as an individual who they get to know well. They answer their phone calls personally when clients ring them. They give their clients easy access to a home care partner who can work with them to deliver the best mix of support possible. If you're in Brisbane South and want to know more, give their friendly team a call on 07 3422 8400 or check out their website flexi.org.au.
So another question we're being asked, and one that we see people asking across social media, certainly a lot of misinformation about this, and the terms we're hearing is, on the 1st of July, the government's going to claw back our funds. This is in relation to any unspent funds that a person has within their home care package come the 1st of July. Can you please clarify, can you please explain what this means, these unspent funds as support at home commences on 1st of July?
Yes, I can. I can definitely tell you that every dollar of unspent funds that has been accumulated for each person on a home care package, and that's the grandfathered and the hybrids, every dollar that they've accumulated right up until June the 30th, 2025, will be carried over into their supported home available funds. That part is not in, there's no question about that. So if a person has $500 in unspent funds, $5,000 in unspent funds, or $50,000 in unspent funds, and we know that there's plenty of them as well, no matter how much it is, if that is unspent funds on June 30, they will be able to continue to access that amount until it runs out for as long as they remain in the supported home program. They can keep that amount even if they are reassessed into a higher classification in the future. That unspent funds amount will be available to them.
Mhm.
I'm going to just add one little thing here, that I haven't heard that it is guaranteed forever. So we know that the government have said they've guaranteed the no worse off principle for fees that grandfathered people will pay or not pay into the future. But I haven't heard this gap that the unspent funds will be guaranteed forever and ever and ever.
Mm-hmm.
We can only operate on what we know right now, and that is that the money will absolutely follow them into the new program. They will be able to access it in exactly the same way that they do right now. They can literally just say, let's have a conversation with their home care provider or their supported home provider and say, hey, I need something here. We've got unspent funds available. Let's go. Let's do it. As long as it fits in with all the other spending criteria, et cetera, et cetera. I don't know whether in 5 years' time the government is going to say, if you've still got 50,000 in unspent funds 5 years down the track, maybe you don't really need that. I don't know whether they're going to do that, but for the time being, it's going to be available without question.
Excellent. So another change on July the 1st is that package funding or classification funding, as will be the new term, will be allocated quarterly, which is different from the monthly allocation now. At present, people can roll over an uncapped amount of package funding each month, but come the 1st of July, the amount that they can roll over from quarter to quarter will change. Let's just touch on this, Anna.
This is huge. 2 parts to that question. So the first part, I'll start with the quarterly budget.
Yep.
So currently, the subsidy in home care packages is actually calculated daily, not monthly, but I mean, it really doesn't kind of matter. It's around days of occupancy. So if you're in hospital for 2 weeks, the subsidy might change if you put your package on hold, et cetera, et cetera. But essentially, it's a daily subsidy. And the supported home program, as you said, it shifts to a quarterly budget. So very, very big difference there. The participants will move from, so it's important to note that the participants will move from the home care packages to supported home at exactly the same annual budget as their current package allows. So if a person is receiving a level 2 right now, that exact amount that's been calculated will carry across into the new program. They won't be reassigned into a support at home classification.
Right.
So what that means essentially is that there's the 4 current home care packages levels, and there's 8 new levels of funding classifications under supported home. So what that means is there's going to be 12 levels of funding because that providers will have to manage. So it just changes the amount that is available, but in some instances, it's very similar amounts to the supported home classification amounts, but really from a consumer perspective, they just have to think about it as, instead of an annual budget, they're going to get it quarterly, but it comes across at exactly the same amount that they are currently receiving on their home care package. They will not be reassigned into a supported home classification level unless or until they have a formal assessment by the assessment services.
Yep.
And that because they need more funding, then they might get reassigned. But remember, even if they get reassigned into a higher level package, they're still protected under the no worse off principle from a fees perspective. They still get to take their unspent funds with them.
Yeah.
The second part of the question that you mentioned was around rolling over of unspent funds. And again, another big, big change. So again, just to explain that currently home care packages consumers can roll over the entire amount of funds that are unspent each month, month after month, year after year, and it just keeps racking up.
Accumulating, yeah.
And accumulate. It's a much better way of putting it rather than racking up. So it keeps accumulating. But in supported home, there are new caps to how much can be rolled over into the new quarter, into the next quarter. We've heard this. I'm going to tell you another thing about this. So what we know is that the government has said that a person can roll over up to $1,000 per quarter or up to 10% of their quarterly budget, whichever is higher.
Yep.
So currently, people who are on a level 1 or 2 package, they are in that maximum 1,000 per quarter range. People who are on a level 3 or 4 home care package now, they will be able to roll over just a little bit more than that. So a level 3 person could roll over up to $1,022. That's pretty close. And a level 4 person could roll over up to $1,550 into the next quarter. But that's only if they've got it available, of course. If it's not there, it's not there. What's really the most important thing to understand about the cap to unspent, to rolling over those quarterly budgets or quarterly amounts, is that a person can only ever have up to $1,000 or 10% of the value of their funding in unspent funds. You can't roll over $1,000 every quarter, so that at the end of the year you've got $4,000. It doesn't work like that.
That's huge.
It's massive.
It's a big change. Yeah.
So if you've got $800 in unspent funds as of the end of quarter 1, you then can't have another $1,000 to roll over into that next quarter. So it's going to take a bit of time for us as a sector to start to understand this nuance in a bit more detail. But suffice to say, you can only ever have 10% or $1,000 of available funds accessible to you on top of your existing quarterly budget. It is huge, which means no more accumulation of unspent funds growing over time. Very, very big issue here.
Yeah. And look, I understand that. As you mentioned before, there are many people out there who have many tens of thousands of dollars in unspent funds, that the expectation is when you're approved and then assigned to level 3 or level 4 home care package, that's the level of service that you need. That's the kind of level of support that you need. So you should be using those funds every week, every month. And if you're not, potentially those funds could go to someone else who is waiting. So I think it's a big change, but I don't disagree with the intent of this. I think the expectation really is that if you're assigned those higher level packages or classifications, you need that level of support. So you should be using. And I guess I know people save up. A lot of people will be saving up for a big purchase. And we won't touch on that today, but there will be another sort of bucket of funding come July the 1st that people can tap into that should they need to make those big purchases and they can't save up like they previously did.
I think that is a really important point. And I know, as you said, that's another discussion topic that you're going to be getting into, but it is worth mentioning that at the moment, just as you did, is that it doesn't mean that people just are left high and dry. If they haven't got enough money in their funding quarterly budgets, there will be other options for them to be able to access additional services or one-off purchases and so forth.
Another big change, so many big changes, but another one that's going to be impacting on the kinds of services and support people can receive within their package or classification come 1st of July is actually the loss of flexibility that a person has within their care plan as their needs change. So currently there's quite a lot of flexibility for a provider to adjust the person's care plan as their needs change. Say, for instance, if a person bumped their leg and developed a wound, they could discuss with their care manager the need for nursing support for wound care, and this would be added into their care plan in real time. From July 1st, we lose that flexibility. People, as I understand it, there's going to be 3 separate streams, which, again, won't go into today, but one of those is clinical. So come 1st of July, if a person doesn't need nursing support and it's not in their support plan, which means it won't be in their care plan, they won't be actually able to say to their provider, "Oh dear, I bumped my leg, I've got a wound, I need nursing support." People are going to have to get reassessment for services that aren't included in their care plan. Can we talk about this, Anna? Because this is another big change that I think people, recipients, participants are really going to have to get their head around.
Yeah, there is a lot to unpack here. So just looking at firstly, the difference, that the change in flexibility is going to be mostly impact new people into the program. So the newbies, the ones that are starting from the 1st of July onwards, they have their assessment, they receive a notice of decision, which from My Aged Care after the assessment that says these are the categories of services that you are going to be eligible to receive. So in that support plan, they might get approvals for specific service types, such as domestic assistance, gardening, shopping, and personal care. And for those newbies, they will only be able to receive services under those specific service types. So you're right. That flexibility to be able to say, I bumped my leg, I need wound care, those people will have to go back for an urgent support plan review to get access to an approval for nursing care. It hasn't been released as exactly how that process is going to work, but we all know that people can't really wait they cannot wait for nursing care. So the government will almost certainly have a fast track ability to flex that for nursing and clinical care for sure. They can't let people sit with a wound for a month while they wait for a nursing classification. So we'll find out more about that as over time. But when it comes to grandfathered participants, and in some ways that some of the hybrid and honeymooner participants as well, they don't really lose that flexibility. And the reason that the ability to say, hey, I don't have a nursing need right now, but in 2 weeks' time I do need it, so let's move around that. Grandfather consumers and participants will be able to maintain that flexibility. So as long as you've got the dollars in your quarterly budget and or any unspent funds, you can still move and flex the types of services that you are receiving.
Yeah.
So that the grandfathered participants that are moving into supported home don't have any restrictions on being able to move from the clinical category to the independence category to the everyday category.
Yes.
They don't have that. If they ever get a new service classification or supported home classification and move up a level, that's going to be a different story. But while they remain on the level that they're at the moment, moving into the new program, they can still flex. They can move between different types of services. They can be much more responsive than a newbie in the system. So if you are a grandfathered client on a level 3 package as of the 1st of July 2025 and you develop a leg wound in August, you and your provider can still flex that quarterly budget or access unspent funds to get your nursing services involved. You don't have to go for a support plan review.
Fantastic.
The only reason you would go for a support plan review is if your entire quarterly budget was not enough to sustain you in the future. You need to change dramatically and you need to get more funding across the board. That's when you go for the support plan review.
Excellent. I'm so glad you raised that, Anna, because I feel like I know the kind of work that you do in supporting providers to support their package recipients. I feel that that point actually needed a lot of clarification. So really appreciate your thoughts on that one. In previous episodes, I've chatted with guests about the care management fee reducing from a maximum of 20% to being now maximum of 10% with support at home. But we haven't yet discussed the package management fee, which is currently capped at 15% and is going to be removed altogether. We acknowledge that the hourly rate for services is likely to increase to offset the loss of that fee or that stream of revenue. What are your thoughts on this?
My thoughts are this is going to be a PR challenge for providers, to be honest, because at the moment, the providers are the ones that have to set the fees. So as you rightly said, care management is going to be a set 10% of the value of a participant's package, whether it's a home care package level or a supported home classification level. Everyone's treated the same. So 10% of that is going to be removed before the client actually gets their funding available to them. So it means that 10% is set into a pool for the provider to access to pay for care management. And I know you've talked about that quite a bit already. So package management is currently charged, separate to care management, package management is currently charged by providers to cover their back of house costs, their operating costs, which includes the cost of compliance, monitoring third-party contracts, staff training, rostering, scheduling, and heaps of other stuff. So under the new program, providers will not be allowed to charge package management as a separate charge at all. All of that stuff is going to have to be bundled together and added to the service cost for each service type. So, for example, if a provider on their price list that they advertise currently charges a person's package, say $75 for an hour to deliver domestic assistance, that's about ballpark average almost at the moment. So the package gets charged $75, not the person, not the individual. So now what's going to happen is that the provider is going to have worked out how much does it cost us to do all of the package management activities. Okay, it's going to cost us this amount. We now add that on top of that $75 to create a new unit price that is all inclusive of the delivering of the actual care service, as well as all of the back of house administrative functions that the provider needs to be able to operate their business. There are financial organisations in the sector that have estimated that some providers' costs may need to rise by as much as 40%, which is quite a lot. So
Yes.
a $75 current price would potentially be a 40% increase on that would become around $105. But remembering that that is an all-inclusive amount for management and administrative costs, cost of delivering the care service in itself, but it's all bundled together. Bearing in mind that the only fixed charge from a participant's funding in the future will be that 10% contribution to the pooled care management fund for providers to access, which means that all participants will effectively have 90% of their package value available for purchasing of care and services. So that's different. So it sounds dramatic to say the $105 an hour for domestic assistance, and everyone's freaking out going, that's terrible. That's way too much.
Yeah.
But it's probably costing them about that if you bundle it all up together now anyway, but it's just represented in a different way.
Yeah.
So for many people, consumers, so for many pool participants, the higher hourly rate may not actually have that much of a measurable impact on the number of hours of care that they can receive. We're crossing our fingers. And in saying that, we're hoping that it's not going to have a negative impact. But remember that the no worse off principle only relates to the personal contributions for grandfathered participants. It doesn't guarantee that a person may not be worse off in other ways. Mm-hmm. So it is possible. Hopefully it doesn't happen for very many people, but it means then that they're not necessarily going to be protected by the no worse off principle in terms of the type of services or supports that they currently purchase, in terms of the frequency of the services that they receive, or indeed the cost of each hour of care. So no worse off principle doesn't protect people from anything other than their personal contributions that they're making. So there may be, for some people, a few changes, but their providers are really onto this, and they will be working really closely with their clients and their participants to try to keep that as minimal as possible.
Yes.
Providers don't want to see their clients disadvantaged. Absolutely not. So they are working hard behind the scenes to identify which of their clients might be impacted in different ways, and they'll be having conversations with those people for sure. There is also an indicative pricing schedule that has been just recently released by the Department of Health and Aged Care, and it is publishing what they are saying is some of the potential new prices that providers might be charging under supported home. That's not really something that we're going to be getting into today, but it is something that people can look up if they want to Google the supported home pricing schedule. That will almost certainly come up at the top, and they can have a look and see what that means for them.
For them, yeah. And we could keep talking for the rest of the day, but I think we've discussed a lot, so we'll leave today's topic here. Next time we have you back, we're going to take a look at the group of people, the honeymooners, the transitional recipients who have been assessed for a package after the 12th of September last year. There are a couple of other really interesting topics that I want to chat about. Well, to me, this is all interesting, and they're all interesting topics, but there are some that I'm really looking forward to talking with you about. Listeners, if you'd like to connect with Anna and follow the work that she does, her links to her LinkedIn profile and also her website are in the show notes. Anna, thank you for your time today. I'm certainly looking forward to our next conversation. We're back next week with another aged care sector thought leader, which is Adrian Morgan of Brisbane home care provider FlexiCare. And it's an episode not to be missed. Until next week, everyone, take care.
Thank you so much for having me today, Coral. And if there are any questions that have come out of this, feel free to do when we start our next discussion about those hybrid honeymooners, transitional people.
Yes.
I'm happy to answer any follow-up questions before we even jump into that topic.
Fantastic.
Next time.
Fantastic. You're so generous, Anna. Thank you very much.
It's been great. Thanks so much for having me.
Hey Care community, thanks for listening to this episode. So you never miss a show, make sure you subscribe to our podcast. If you'd like to know more about what we do, head to our website, cmeacn.com.au.